Hey everybody, John Ramdeen and Robin Black here in our FN studios. The 145-pound and 155-pound champion, Conor McGregor. Big fight announcement. No, there's no fight announcement. But we're going to talk about him anyways because the world wants to talk about Conor McGregor, which is really sad because when we started following Conor McGregor in Cage Warriors, we showcased him here before anybody else showcased him. We saw him be the 145-pound and 155-pound champion. And we love the fact that this guy was just a savage. He was an awesome mixed martial artist. And much like the Diaz brothers, that's why we got behind this guy, is to see him fight. Why do we care if he's not fighting?
Because he's a fascinating individual. And you know, this week we are currently engaged in a conversation about a fighter that is not fighting. And yesterday we talked about two brothers,
yes,
Nick and Nate Diaz, that are not fighting.
Guys, fight! We want to see you fight. If you want to fight, UFC, pay them the money, give them the big fights. We need to see these guys scrap it out.
And I think we just worked out what we're doing here. Literally, we just really want to watch these guys fight. And we will stand around here, we'll do it here, and show that. We'll go on Twitter and people, because we're fascinated by these combat athletes. And in lieu of getting to see them do the thing we love to do, we can just sit around and speculate. Well, Conor just put out a boxing video. Maybe he's gonna box. Dude boxes every day. Yeah. Like, dude's been boxing for the last 10 years. But what is he doing? What is it? Oh, his hands are down. I don't know if he's getting ready. Just fight, please. Please fight, or don't. I get it. You have a life. We don't get to.
We want to see him fight.
I know.
He seems to love fighting.
He does.
And the fact is, there's this battle right now between the management and Conor McGregor. They need to make money. Put Conor in there. You're gonna make lots of money. Just give him his chunk of the pie. Give him the biggest fights, the most interesting fights. If you can think of 3 fights that you need to see of Conor McGregor, it's like, Robin, you know what? For you, I'm going to give you any opponent, 3 opponents, 145, 155 pounds, 170 pounds, all those divisions or none of those divisions or one of those divisions or whatever.
I'd just start listing people, just all of them. Like we start with Khabib and Tony and Diaz too, and just keep going down. Last night I went out and caught up with my favorite coach that I've worked with, Billy Martin, boxing coach. He's preparing Sandy Seguros to fight for a world title at the Hershey Center coming up.
Cool.
And so Billy and I went out for a beer. We're talking about Conor McGregor. Billy trains mixed martial artists, but he's a primarily boxing coach. We went and got together with Lee Baxter, who is the promoter of that show at the Hershey Center coming up in 5 or 6 weeks, in March, I believe. And Lee, right away, we're talking about Conor McGregor. Lee is a boxing obsessive. He's got tattoos of boxers down his leg. And he loves boxing. He was there preparing the cards. Right away, Conor. That's what we were talking about. That's what we're all talking about. The world of boxing, they're talking about it. And right away, I was on Rogan's podcast. I was out with Shab. Everybody, can he beat Mayweather? And you start actually thinking about that. You get engaged in this conversation while we're waiting to watch the man fight. And right away, you start thinking of all these different things. Mayweather moves his head. We outweigh him by 25 pounds. Start drilling him in that shoulder. Shoulder roll, fucking start drilling him in that shoulder.
But he's not going to stay there.
Well, so then we start moving, we walk him in. There are ways to try to think outside the box. And if that fight happens, the only way you have a shot against the best boxer in the world is think way outside the box. And that right there
gathers... So don't make it about boxing.
Yeah, you have 2 fists, but don't box. And that... solve that riddle. But like I said, Lee Baxter, Billy Martin, Sandy Seguros, all the boxing people that I run to talk to, they're talking about Conor McGregor. It's real. This is a real thing. He's fucking Elvis Presley, but he boxes.
Yeah, the strange thing about it is when the UFC knows that they have such a commodity on their hand like Conor McGregor, the world is talking about him. What is their strategy to make sure that this guy is signed for a long-term deal and that the deal is good for both parties, where he is getting more than any fighter, maybe more than any fighter ever, in the sense that all the fighters that ever fought in the UFC, Conor McGregor is probably going to make more than all of those fighters combined. Now, I'm embellishing things, but when you look at, you remove Brock Lesnar, you remove Ronda Rousey, you remove George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, and Chuck Liddell, and he probably has made more than all
he has made more than all of them
all of those guys combined.
It's true. Listen, Dana White is and his team are highly intelligent. And I know that if you are angry at the UFC, you might go, no, he's not. They took this thing from a non-existent thing to a behemoth. You don't do that by being not smart. They are tough negotiators by history, but they're highly intelligent. So you deal with the reality. Oh man, McGregor is this big. So he's saying he wants a piece of the company. It happens all the time. Duke Rufus gave Anthony Pettis a piece of Rufus Sport. Every single business, watch Shark Tank, give him a piece, bring him in for life. That's what they're going to end up probably doing. He'll want this big of a piece. They'll want him to have this big of a piece, and somewhere in the middle, he'll get what he wants. Is that fair? It is fair if somebody makes that much money for the corporation. It just is. That's how business works. The only good deal of any kind that you're ever going to make in your life or ever going to be involved in is a deal that is good for all parties involved. Good for you, good for the other person, and good for everybody else involved. If this fight happens, it'll involve Mayweather Promotions, it'll involve whatever Conor calls his thing, and it'll involve the UFC. Each one will want a bigger piece than they'll end up getting, but they'll all agree at some point, and everybody will get rich.
Seems to be some turbulent times for the UFC in the sense that we don't know when the stars are coming back. We don't know if Conor McGregor is going to fight in 2017. Is Ronda Rousey coming back to the sport? GSP, it doesn't look like he's coming back, or I think they would have got a deal done for UFC 206, but you just never know. What do you think is happening between the new owners of the UFC and the old existing management that have helped build the sport to where it was before it was purchased?
I'm going to throw out my anecdotal opinion with bits and pieces of information, but not enough to probably even give this opinion, to be honest with you. But when you really think, what do I really know? What am I really putting together here? But this is the vibe that you get, is you come in and you buy something, and you will have a large amount of expertise in your business. Oh man, we know the entertainment business. We know what's going on. Let us make a bunch of decisions. And Dana, Craig, that whole team that has made this thing, the only one in the world that has made this type of thing enormous, eventually we'll be like, okay, well, go ahead, you guys make those. Oh, it's challenging. Oh, it is challenging, isn't it? Oh, okay. Oh, you want us to help you? Okay, yeah. And slowly over time, since the time that it's been purchased, they have probably, Dana and his team are very, very back in control because they're the only ones in the world that can run this thing. They're the only people. When you are a corporate behemoth with a ton of success in the world of entertainment, you would look and go, oh yeah, this is just like the concert business. This is just like the movie business. This is just like any other sport. It is not. This exists as this rare, individual, beautiful thing that it is because they rewired the back of the machine in such complex ways to make this thing that is almost unsustainable work. And they do it by putting in 60 and 70 and 80-hour weeks. And you can't reproduce that with some guy in a suit who came over from basketball or some guy who came over from the music business. So whether that was happening, I will tell you that Dana and his team are probably very, very much back in charge because they should be, because they're the only ones in the world that can run it.
I call that the Brad K approach. But when you think about with the UFC, the old management and the new management, all these interim titles that are going on right now, do you believe that's a new management thing? Because it didn't really exist before it was purchased.
From the standpoint of a fight obsessive who also has an interest in how people consume things and how entertainment wears off and how we respond to it and how we treat the buffet that is our input of entertainment, these things have less value the more of them that you create. But ultimately what is happening is a belt, a division, a next title shot, any of these mechanisms were there to keep your attention long enough to fall in love with the thing itself. Soccer doesn't have any of that shit. And it's the most popular sport in the world, despite the fact that not much is going on. Because over time you had made an attachment and an understanding to the sport itself. Fighting, that is our job, is to make people see that the fight is what matters, not the divisions, not the titles. And by commoditizing these titles, we're even making that happen quicker. We have to let people fall in love with the art itself, or else eventually there'll be 57 titles and none of them will mean anything. So our job of making people see that the martial arts is the greatest thing in the world, the timeline that we have to do that is being shortened by all these titles.
Martial arts certainly is the greatest, and we love Conor McGregor, the 145 and 155 pound champion. Please come back soon.